Good evening and welcome back to KTN Prime. We're set to have a conversation that's centered on Kenya's second liberation struggle on this eve of Saba Day, a day to honor Kenya's struggle for democracy. 36 years ago, there was agitation and protests that yielded multi-party democracy, which we enjoy today after the repealing of Section 2A. Now, today we take stock of the progress that has been made thus far since Kenya's second liberation struggle, equally highlighting the bottlenecks while trying to draw parallels, if any, to the Gen Z agitation for better governance and accountability. I'm joined by gentlemen who have the benefit of hindsight, some of whom were actively involved in the second liberation. Allow me to introduce them as we deep dive into this particular conversation that bears historical importance in Kenya's democratic space. I'm joined by Wafula Buke. He's a former political detainee. Karibu sana. It's great to have you with us.
Political prisoner.
Political prisoner, not detainee. What's the difference, by the way?
Detainee is a detainee is a person who is incarcerated without having to go through the court process. But a prisoner like me, we were packaged in your house and taken to prison through the court process.
Okay.
So I'm a political prisoner, not detainee. Though I've served a detention time again some other time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go with what you've rightfully said. Asante sana for your time. Equally joined by Njeru Gadhangu, who is a former Runyenja's Member of Parliament, but equally a second liberation veteran. Karibu sana. It's an honor to have you with us.
Nashukuru sana ndugu.
Asante. We're equally joined by Professor Macharia Munene, not new to the show. He is a political historian. We appreciate your presence. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Equally joined by Saba Churchill, who's the Executive Director at the Kenya National Civil Society Center. We appreciate your presence. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, I think it's proper to start with the background because today marks that 36th anniversary, as we mentioned, of the original 1990 Saba March at Kamkunji grounds. Needless to say, some of us were not there, so it's proper to have gentlemen with prior experience to perhaps break down what was the root cause for the protest. Did we achieve it 36 years on? And perhaps some of the issues that have emerged ever since. And speaking of some of the issues, we saw a one-party monopoly back then, where KANU ilikuwa chama ya mama na baba, as they mentioned, and activists risked detention and imprisonment. As we mentioned, torture, detention without trial, just to mention a few. And perhaps let's start with you, Professor Macharia Munene, because 36 years later, after that height of the struggle, what was the promise of the second liberation, apart from multi-party democracy? And has that structural baseline of Kenya's democracy actually transformed?
Thank you. Let me start by paying tribute to these three gentlemen. They are legends in their own times. And the other thing, if you may allow me, pay tribute to Professor Chere Warungi. Some of you know of him. He's gone to his Mecca. So, 36 years ago, two things happened. One, in the 1980s, Moi was supreme. And he even wrote a little book, Philosophy. Yeah, in which he explained some very interesting things, why he was doing some things in that book. But the major goof was imposing Mlolongo. That was a major mistake. Because with Mlolongo, you can see the secret ballot, you really don't know. And people saw short lines being declared long, to the point that even Moi eventually admitted that there was something wrong.
Yeah.
What that did was to break the trust that people had in government. And so you had a rising agitation. Alternative media showed up. People became bold in challenging some things. So from 1988 to 1990, you have people being bold and coming out. Now, in 1990, you have now a different change. Yeah? First was the loss of trust. More stopped being believable. In 1990, when Matiba and Rubia, being law-abiding citizens, asked for permission to have a rally in Kamkunji, and they were denied. And then they called off the rally because they had no permit. But you know, to say Kamkunji, it was symbolic. And they wanted to explain to the country what had gone wrong in their own way. Yeah? And since they were denied permission, they called off the rally. They were not even there anyway, because they were detained on the 4th of July. So officially, there were no leaders. Yet people went to Kamkunji, despite the leaders not being there. And they were there for their own commitment.
Okay.
And they showed the other things, that they had lost fear of government. So since the police went to disperse them, that's where the confrontation started. And for 3 days, they were running confrontations, which captured the international media, the local media. But the main thing that happened was that it showed people were no longer afraid of the government.
Okay.
The initiative moved from the government now to the ordinary people. And so what the government was trying to do is to play catch-up with events. So when the other development came after July 7th, that's when you now have more and more people coming out bold, being seen, and the creation of Ford after that. And it took about a year and a half before the repeal of Section 2A. Which was a major thing in itself.
Okay. Well, was that the singular promise of the second liberation, multipartism, and that's it? Or?
Well, it was mainly, actually there were two debates.
Okay.
One group said that what was wrong with the country was that the president was not following the Constitution. They actually claimed that the Constitution was very good. It's only that it was not being what?
Followed.
That's one argument. The other argument was that the problem is not the president. It is the Constitution, which allows him to do anything he wanted. So from there you have now this agitation. We need to, whatever it is, we need to rectify the Constitution. And one way of rectifying that Constitution is to go back to the idea of multipartism. So restoring multipartism was a major achievement in itself, which Moi did without really wanting to.
Okay, interesting. You've set the pace, given us the background of this agitation and how far it has come. Gadhangu, since you were right there in the trenches in the 90s, talk to us about a couple of issues, because since 1990, the country still continues to grapple with human rights concerns, corruption, abductions, extrajudicial killings, and other government ills. And it's not just under this current administration, it's been successive. With benefit of hindsight, has Saba achieved a lot when you talk about fidelity to the Constitution, good governance, or have we sort of drifted from the true intentions of Saba?
I think we need to look at Saba as a culmination of a program that started long before Saba. So that Kenyans can actually understand that even what is happening today is another culmination because of our ignorance and maybe not thinking so much about what change should cause. From 1969, this country has been at very, very serious crossroads, because it is 1969 that Kenya became a de facto one-party state. And since 1969 to 1990, Kenyans were struggling to reintroduce multipartyism or plural thinking in this country, which was resisted by the two governments. That is the Kenyatta government and the Moi government. You know that the 1969 witnessed the banning of KPU, Kenya People's Union, and then the detentions of almost all their leaders. All their leaders. And Kenyatta went on like that until he said bye-bye to us, you know, as one-party state, KANU. You know, you couldn't form another party after that, right? Then we started thinking that things were not correct. And when I say we, I'm seriously talking about we, you know, that I was involved in that campaign, that Kenyatta is gone. He left me in prison. Some of us, many of us, were in prison. Some of us released just immediately after he died in December 1978. You know, and we asked ourselves this question: what is it must we do to reintroduce multipartyism in this country? Even though we were still in prison, we were asking ourselves that question. When we came out here, we said, no, we cannot continue this way. And remember, a lot of our young people involved with the university or college politics were agitating a lot. By 1980, we already had a lot of processions and demonstrations from the universities demanding change in this country. You know, and therefore by 1982, when Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and George Anyona and some of us again are out to form the Kenya Alliance Socialist, Kenya African Socialist Alliance, right? We were still under the de facto one-party rule. And because of Jaramogi's stand, the parliament decided that de facto to be done away with and become a de jure one-party state. And they went to parliament, introduced a bill that was debated for only 18 minutes. 18 minutes, and they changed the constitution into one-party rule. And the party to continue will be recognized by the constitution, Kenya African National Union, KANU. So you can imagine that Kenyans were being forced to think that it is only the presidents that were right in this country, right? By the time you are coming to 1986, there is already the Mwakenya, the DTM are formed, and people continue now to almost physically fight. We had about 5 groups in this country. Some of them accommodated in Uganda, some of them accommodated in Dar es Salaam, some of them accommodated in Libya, some of them accommodated in Cuba, readying themselves to come here and fight, you know, violently, with guns. And even Moi himself knew that, and others knew. So when you look at 1990, you are not looking at just a simple thing that Matiba has come or Ruby has come. No. What is happening here is this, that 1988 becomes the terminus of anger. That he has said Mlolongo is the one to determine who the leader is going to be. You know, you have got 3 members following you, you are the leader. The one who has got 1,000 votes is thrown out. And people said, you know, we won't do it. Matiba at that time was thrown out of Kiharu. There was Simeon Nyachai, who was the chief secretary, who was thrown out of the president's office and several others. I'm only giving the two because they were very visible.
Yes, yes.
Very good.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
for us, we said now, what we must do is campaign for multipartyism now. Introduction of multi-party politics. We already have about 3,000 young people in prison who are members of Mwakenya. 3,000, including him. I think that is why he's calling himself a political prisoner, because he was thrown in those years, right?
Yeah.
And we said, look, for us to be able to fight for these people to come out, we must announce the introduction of multipartyism, and we selected a party called Kenya National Congress, taking from the South African Congress, right? And so we went to Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. You allow me to mention him because he's a great man. We went to him and we said, look, Mzee, this is what we are thinking about, you know? And he said, very well, you go and do it. But before you move, go to Bildad Kagia and tell him that you have briefed me about this. Come and tell me what he says. George and I went to Bildad Kagia and we talked with him, and Kagia said this. Go tell Jaramogi, I have agreed, but on one condition. You will be able to maintain that movement for the next 12 months. And when we see your success after 12 months, we will join you. We came to Jaramogi, gave him that.
Okay.
And he said, go to Achengoneko and Lukobok, tell them the same. We went to Lukobok and Achengoneko. And he said, yes. We came back. After about 3 days, he asked us, have you told Raila about this? We said, no. He said, I'll tell him myself. But in the meantime, go start thinking about who else you can work with. George Anyona, being a kinsman or countryman, don't worry, kinsman or countryman, to Simeon Nyachai. I'm mentioning these names because Kenyans don't know. And these are the fellows who were dismissed by Moi in 1988. So we went to him and he said, I may not be able to join you, but he gave us 250,000 shillings to prepare leaflets and what have you for this nation, you know? And he said this because I would come. Go and tell Kennedy Matiba. And he took his telephone from this Kampansora office. He called Kenneth Matiba. He said, you know, the thing that you were saying some times ago, we have got George Anyona and Kathangu here, and they have got a pure plan. Work with them.
And the rest is history.
The next day,
Okay.
we were taken to Kenneth Matiba by a man who has died called Bacha, who was brother to Gitao, again, Councillor Gitao, who has just died about 3 months ago. I'm putting it straight because I have heard a lot of things that are not correct, right?
Okay.
And we went and started talking about that. We can continue talking and talking and talking.
Yeah.
But one thing is that the announcement of the Saba was done on the 23rd of April, 1990. Why? Because tumezungumza until Oko was killed. And we are saying we are announcing this thing on 1st of June. This is when we are going to announce KNC. Kenneth Matiba made a small mistake, but we forgave him. He went and recruited Rubia, who we didn't know in the movement. And they went the next morning and announced multi-party now. And we shall have a big rally in Kamukonji on the 7th of July, right?
Yeah.
And the next day we went to him, we said, Ken, you are giving yourself up. You are dealing with a dictator. He said, I'm going to kill you or put you in prison for many years.
Okay.
He said, no, Daniel cannot arrest me. Ah, very good. After that, you know what happened.
Definitely.
So, why is it that I'm talking this way? Because there is an assumption that the current Gen Z generation is the one that is changing Kenya. In fact, I want to say this, that don't show creeping dictators or actual dictators your chests. They're going to kill you. Dictators are Sadists, you know, and if you don't know it today, that you must work intelligently, you must be able to coordinate yourselves, not with your telephones, because those telephones are by everybody, including the Safaricom, which is working sometimes, even for the government, you know, and so forth.
All right. I think you've really broken down the history. Allow us to engage the other panelists as well. We'll be coming back to you,
I thought
even as we try and draw parallels between the Gen Z movement ever since 2024 and what was seen since you said it's a clamor. It just didn't happen in 1990, what was seen ahead of 1990. Buke, let's talk about your ordeal briefly, because you survived the dark days of state-sponsored detentions, of arrests, of imprisonment, brutal crackdowns on campuses and national dissidents. When you look at the current political landscape in 2026, do you sort of recognize the same underhand tactics that were used back then against you over 3 decades ago? Are we dealing with the same exact beast that perhaps has changed with better PR?
If I look at what we went through and the things I've read about what senior citizens in the struggle have gone through, and then compare it with what's going on now, I don't know what senior comrade will say, but we seem to have been lucky because in the 70s and 80s, when the system didn't know what to do with you, they had an option. You would be detained. If they can't hold you in prison, if they can't take you through courts and secure a favorable judgment, they take you to detention. With the emergence of the Ruto administration, now I realize that was a safety valve for freedom fighters. Because if detention was not there, apparently, these people who were detained would have been killed. I'm just trying to compare. And if you come the current regime, what do they do to those they can't take to court? They kill them, they disappear them. There was a slight reform when they said shoot the legs, but we realized legs also lead to death. So I'm saying that comparing the two, I find that in our days, it was a bit better. I want to also maybe say something favorable about Moi, because I'm a trained guerrilla. I trained in Uganda. I know Koigo Amwere trained in Libya as well as Uganda. I know many other people. But what did Moi do? When we came back, he arrested us, beat us up till we cried and called our mothers, but didn't kill us. This government, I don't know, if it can kill people carrying the Constitution, people carrying telephones and flags, how about if they behaved the way we did? I think under this regime, we would be long dead and buried. I want to think that our dictator was slightly better. You see, most of us have gone through prisons and torture and everything and gone to court and got some awards, court awards. The reason why we can be able to get court awards is because we were arrested by policemen and it's known and it's documented. Now people are being arrested by goons. Not like the 10 or 7 who beat up Joya. Now they come in hundreds and take control of a town center and beat up. Now, even if you are beaten and injured, where do you go? Do you sue the state? Now, at the moment, people are being beaten, maimed, and killed, and we can't tell the future of justice for them because we can't differentiate between the police and the goons. I want to think that looking at that, we may be a bit better. Now, I also look at, for example, the media, because the media is a major player in the political process of any country. I opened the Star, which I don't even read. I pick it so that I can check. Sorry to talk about another media house. And I open the Standard. The Star, which I don't read, is packed with adverts. Now, the paper which I read, sometimes I don't get on the streets because it's been taken away. The Standard does not have a government advert. You see? This is Cold War against the media. The media. It is basically trying to sabotage an important sphere in our struggle. I'm trying to say that my tribulations of those days, I'm alive because Ruto was not in power. If Ruto was in power, I would be in heaven. Assuming those who are killed when the innocent go to heaven. At least for thieves are here. So that's briefly what I can say.
Okay, and we'll come back to you because there's compensation going on, though others say justice without compensation is still...
maybe just focus on that.
Okay.
I have gone to court twice for compensation. The first case, I was arrested, I think it was Federal Times, 1995, thereabout. And I stayed in court in prison, under torture for 49 days. I think they broke my tooth, they hit me with a pistol. They'd come from my throat, but I dodged and they got the tooth. That one, I was given 500,000 shillings by Justice Rawal. Then Nyayo House, where I was for only 14 days, I was awarded 6.5. You know 6.5 million. I'm trying to compare. If 6.5 is equal to 14 days, then how much do dead people deserve? Yeah. According to Ruto, they deserve how much? 3 million?
3 million.
Yeah?
I think it's between,
whatever it is. But I'm just trying to say that I know other comrades who got as much as 20 million, and they're alive. But now, under Ruto's administration, life is worth about 3 million shillings. And my 14 days could give me, if we use the same logic, then we multiply 14 days divided by life expectancy 70 years. Yeah. I'm saying that there's quite some craziness in the manner in which compensation is being made.
All right. Never mind, the first phase is ongoing. But Churchill, as you come in, because human rights monitors and recent civil society briefs indicate that there's systematic squeezing of the civic space. We have moved from perhaps police dispersing crowds that have already gathered to sealing off entire cities before a single protest banner is actually raised, if you can borrow from the June 25th commemoration, which was littered with roadblocks while you're trying to access the central business district. As a leader in the civic space, how can citizens exercise their constitutional right, which is sacrosanct, and assemble when the state simply locks down the geographical infrastructure of the capital? That might be the scenario we'll witness tomorrow, bearing in mind the Nairobi regional commander said he didn't receive any notice ahead of the Saba protest that are scheduled tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Perhaps I would also start from the original Saba, because I was old enough. I was in high school, and I want to say that it cost me, it made me to get expelled from high school. The reason being that the agitation, in the course of the agitation, the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and others, and a few others, Akina Nyona, at some point announced the formation of a political party. A lot of people talk about NDP, the NDP that Raila formed when he left for Kenya. But there was an original NDP that Jaramogi and Anyona and others formed. And they went to the Register of Societies, under which political parties were being registered then. And said, we have come to register a political party. And the register told them that, you know what the Constitution says, that Kenya shall be a one-party state. And at that time, the ruling party and government had not gone ahead to specify the name of the ruling party. So Jaramogi, and we were reading this in high school quite excitedly, you know, it was the days of weekly review, society, beyond, very revolutionary periodicals. And Jaramogi and group tells them, but yes, who told you it is not this one that we want registered? And then the ruling party discovers that there is a lacuna. So they rush back to parliament to say, and the ruling party shall be. So that's when they specified. But how did it get me out of school? When they announced the colors of the party, as young boys, in high school and getting excited about, the progress that the progressive forces, what the progressive forces were doing, we looked for, we went to a local tailor and got a kitamba, some piece of cloth, and looked for paint and painted it in those colors. And you can imagine how risky it can be. Hoisting such a thing on a hill in the Rift Valley. I went to school in the Rift Valley, mostly Baringo County district, as it was called then, and later was in Gishu. And so within no time, we did it in the evening. By morning, the whole place was swarming with security people. The special branch, as the National Intelligence Service was called. And they wanted to know who has done this. I looked at the situation. I was an ethnic minority in the school. And for the first time, I expelled myself from school because I didn't want, I knew eventually they would know. And I just left, sneaked out of school, I never went back for them, all my stuff. So that is the role, if at all, I played. Yeah. You had also raised a question about what was the outcome of the original Saba. I remember, other than the repeal of Section 2A that finally happened in 91, leading to 92 elections, Moi also accepted, reluctantly though, the 2-term limit. Already assured that even if it was effected, he would still be eligible
for 2 5-year terms.
For 10 years.
Yes.
And using that, managed to divide the opposition. Of course, as Gadangwa said, the opposition also played into their hands in 92 elections and subsequently 97 elections. And of course, led a minority government in those 2 subsequent elections. If you put the votes that the opposition, different opposition figures got in 92 and even 97, any of them would have been the president of this republic as early as 92. But because of personal ambitions, they didn't succeed.
Okay.
Fast forward to what you are calling the civic space. As early as 95, I joined 94. I was among those who founded the 4 Cs, the Citizens Coalition for Constitutional Culture. And together with contemporary Waikwa Wanyoike, who is now a prominent barrister, practicing either in court or in, with international organizations in the Americas and Europe, we became the 2 student representatives sitting in the 4 Cs. And the 4 Cs, bringing together Law Society of Kenya, International Commission of Jurists, was the first to spearhead the writing of a model constitution, the Kenya we want. And those were the days, when, contestations of leadership of Law Society of Kenya was like a general election, because there were those who were pro-system and those who were anti-system, the likes of Paul Mwit and others. But in 97, and as a culmination again, all these processes are culmination, I was part of the National Convention Executive Council and its assembly. And we managed to get, the IPPG reforms that did away with the Detention Act that Buke wishes should be brought back as a safety net for those who are being killed. It's like wishing that we be recolonized by the British or any other European power for that matter. Of course, we are still colonized now by all of them in different ways through, extensive, imperialism and so on.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and then there was liberation of the airwaves. As a young boy growing up in the village and later even in high school, there was this culture among Kenyans to gather in the nearest shopping center to listen to BBC and Voice of Kenya, Voice of America, BBC and Voice of America. And people trusted more what the BBC said and what the Voice of America said than our own Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, or Voice of Kenya as it was called. And part of that was because of censorship. One, it was the only media outlet. All these KTN, a latter day, emergence, though pretty older than some of the others that have since emerged, and so on and so forth. So the benefits of the original Saba are quite many. The multipartyism was the main one, of course, and that's what most people remember.
Okay.
But that is when a recalcitrant KANU accepted the two-term limit in principle before it got entrenched in the constitution and through the IPPG reforms. We also had, the need to have, equal airtime for both the ruling party and opposition parties. And of course, it came with these nuances that the opposition used to be mentioned whenever they are disagreed. Of course, they say we covered them. But for 30 minutes of KBC, you'd be getting to know where the late President Moi had attended church, who was the preacher, which book was read, and which hymn was sung.
Okay.
And we'd go through that for 30 good minutes, and then they mentioned the opposition in negative lights and so on and so forth. Okay. And we said, so far so good. Whenever and some of the media houses that were like radios that were allowed were only allowed to play music. But then we met some of them and said, it also matters which music you play. You can choose to play liberation reggae music. Just put there, I want to rule my destiny. And with the time, Kenyans will get a gist of what the music is about.
Okay.
So it's about creativity.
All right.
So what is being perceived? So if you asked me, comparing the situation today and what we had in the 90s, I would tell you, as also a former guest of the state, by the way, I was arrested 8 times and tortured and so on and so forth.
Detained or imprisoned?
Okay. I think we could call it harassment because you'd be held. The law of holding people for 24 hours was not there.
Yeah.
So you'd be held for as long as the authorities wanted.
Okay.
And then you'd be released. Then you'd be rearrested on another charge. So there were all these consecutive trumped-up charges that were meant to keep you in prison, even though they know there is no charge that can hold before a court of law. But I would tell you that, yes, the situation has changed considerably. We have this multiplicity of political parties. With technology and artificial intelligence, we have a new phenomenon called citizen journalism. That today, young people below my age, millennials and Gen Zs, and those that are coming, the alphas coming behind them, do not watch. Very few of them are watching us. They rely on what they see on social media. Of course, a lot of it done with a very limited professionalism. They are not trained people.
Yeah.
So to that extent, the civic space has expanded exponentially. We have, I can't keep track of the number of television stations in this country. I can't keep track of radio stations in this country. But just like in any democratic society, and democracy being a continuous experiment and struggle, because what we are seeing also in the developed world, like Americas and Europe, we are seeing, you saw the demonstration by the supremacists in America ahead of the America Day. And they are saying democracy has failed because democracy has brought people of color. You are seeing what is happening in South Africa. Our own are being ejected from South Africa and so on and so forth. So, yes, a lot of change has happened, but we are also seeing persistent and spirited attempts to claw back on some of the gains that we have made. And I think this is where the battle is. The battle is, do we allow the state that at times acts out of paranoia? You know, the mere fact, occasionally when I go outside this country, we bash President Ruto so much. But when you get out there, people respect him so much. They say, he's leading very stubborn people. People who put his caricature in coffins. This guy must be. So he seems to enjoy a lot of respect. Reason? Those people outside, including our neighboring countries, envy us because some of the things that we are able to do here as Kenyans, they can't do, even in developed economies.
Exercising
and
freedoms.
so
Yeah.
I would say that, yes, the struggle is, between allowing the state that is acting out of paranoia, aware that, citizens get information before the state itself accesses it. I pitied President Ruto when he was announcing the crash that killed General Ogola. By the time he was coming to the nation to announce, the accident itself was all over the place. I'd received it. So that is the situation in which states across the world, not just Kenya, find themselves in, not to justify their actions, but to say that, the battle, the ongoing battle now, is between pushing forward with expanding civic space or allowing the state to encroach and claw back on some of the gains for which Kenya and many Kenyans, including, Gadangu here and Buke, myself and others, paid through our liberties.
Let's hear from Buke briefly before we cross over to Prof. Yeah?
What touched me is the statement that Ruto enjoys some sympathy and respect.
He does.
That's what I want to respond to. Now, not so long ago, a poll was done, I think, by some global agency that's respected. And they were looking for the worst dictators in the world. And I think ours won. Not just dictator and the worst, most inhuman person. He won, but somebody rigged and made him number 2. No, it was in public news. Yes. So when we say that the public, the international community has respect for Moi, I wonder, how come the guy ranked so highly in regard to his, poor performance? And again, as we look at how the world perceives him, also look at statistics, look at the number of people the government has killed, look at the levels of corruption, how we are ranked internationally. I think that the international community is not as blind as we may imagine. I think Ruto is not a popular head of state internationally. And information available is that he ranks very poorly and ranks very highly as far as matters dealing with poor governance, corruption, and practice of inhumanity to people is concerned. Yeah.
Would you mind if I say something about that? Because I feel there is something deeper than just Ruto and in the neighbors and so forth. And that which is deeper is this, that the powers in Kenya have been maintained through very deliberate conspiracies. And this conspiracy is something that Kenyans don't think about. They don't talk about it. That to create Jomo Kenyatta, it was created in Marara Government House by the British. And they agreed about what to do in this country. What are you going to do? When you get there, please, moja, mbili, tatu, ine. They are the same people who worked out to have Murumbe out, Jaramogi out, Moi in the same conspiracy, whose patrons included Mackenzie and Charles Njonjo, right? After that, after that, then the conspiracy deepened about who will take from Moi. And the debate continued. And they are convinced if they continued that way, then Kenya could be ruled for about 500 years by the same families. So we have two families here that control the system, and that is the Kenyatta system and the Moi system. Anybody else is either recruited directly by them or is a friend of one of the relatives of those families. What you are talking about, therefore, is this, that Ruto can be maintained because he is part of it. He is part of that. And anything that you look at and see what happens is that every election season that comes, they split themselves into two, that are going to be in the opposition and that are going to be in the government. Whoever wins welcomes the other to the system. And so the campaign that is going on across the world today is that you have got about 3,000 people in this country who are scattered for business all over the world. And that money is brought together so that it can be able to be dished out to the people. And all of them are involved. I don't want to name any name, but I want to tell you, they are all relatives or associates in the family and business.
So Hustler versus Dynasty is just
the dynasty
rhetoric.
is one.
Okay.
The dynasty is one. Jomo Kenyatta dynasty is the one that is ruling this nation. Period.
Interesting. And Prof, as you perhaps add your take on that, because they've touched on a couple of issues, the president's image abroad vis-a-vis right here in the country, but equally the space for democracy. I'm tempted to repeat what then Deputy President William Ruto said at Chatham House. I think it was in July 2022, where he regarded this handshake government that was there then as you know, it's quite amorphous, a mongrel, noting that you don't know where the opposition starts and where the government begins. So at the end of the day, we now have a broad-based government that is sort of similar, where you find the leader of majority and minority agreeing more than they disagree. So talk to us about what happens when the line between government and the official opposition is actually erased. Who speaks for the public interest? Has the Constitution designed parliamentary oversight? And has it collapsed when you talk about parliamentary oversight?
One, President Ruto is very ambitious to be liked by some leaders in the West. And he struggles very hard to be accepted by the French, by the British, by the Americans, the leadership. So in that struggle, he is then portrayed as the leader of the Africans, which he wants to be portrayed as the leader of the Africans. The Africans might have other ideas, but that's his desire. And he seems to get it, which makes him very, very happy. As to the issue of opposition and government, politicians are interesting animals. So they, even this one.
It's part of the mayor.
They just bend with whatever they think is the wind. And Ruto has gone out of his way to erode the other side. And the other side has agreed to be eroded. Whether they are given envelopes or whatever, or they are scared, or something is done until one of them said he was asleep when votes were being taken. So he just sat with them and woke up. He said, well, okay. So the laws are clear about how to behave in parliament. They do not follow. So the caliber of the people who are elected, and I don't want to say the education level because that's not an issue. The character of people who are elected in parliament is wanting because they do not know how to represent the people who elected them.
But what does that speak to Chapter 6 of the Constitution, We just heard that IEBC might lock out financiers of goons, anyone who's proven to be dishing out money. But
You see, the IBC is an organ that was put there to supervise elections, not to determine elections. Now, I saw the numbers they were putting out. 4-point-something billion for the president.
yeah.
You know they'll spend about 10 billion, and there will be no accounting, but it will be spent. MCAs, I said 3 million, they'll spend 10 million shillings. And they'll break those things. But these are guidelines. And it will be very difficult for the IBC to enforce with its limited resources in terms of personnel or whatever. So what I'm saying is that the quality of the people we elect has gone down. And that's one of the problems. And therefore, whether they call themselves opposition or broad-based something or whatever it is, they are eating. The Minister for Money, John Bandy, when the first cabinet was appointed, Ruto cabinet, he called it a skunk. Now he's joined the skunk, and he's doing very well. So it becomes a problem in that sense. Okay. Let me say something else about the move from single party when it was declared. There was an assumption, I remember the euphoria, general assumption that Moi has lost the election, mainly because Kaunda had lost in Zambia and they were Akime. And that was a mistake on the other side. Because Moi had lost, they all assumed any of them can be president. So who was going to replace Moi? So they had no time to talk anything as they were fighting. Now, Moi being a very clever politician, whether you like it or not, he was a very clever politician. And he's the one who imposed the 2-term limit when he thought that he might lose the election, so that nobody else would rule for as long as he had as president. That was the genesis of it. The other thing he did, in hindsight, which sounds good, is to require that you show national presence, the 25% of 5 out of 8. It's Moi who did it when the only party in parliament was KANU. And he wanted it that way, to make it difficult for anybody else to win. Okay. And in case he loses, no one else. Now, what happened? Somehow, he won. How he won is not the issue, but he won. Then come 1997, he won again. And that's when he started changing, saying, wait a minute, this thing he put there is no wrong. And we saw that in the commission that was looking at the constitution, say we should do something about it, remove this thing. Fortunately, it was not removed because of rebellion within KANU. Nyachai led that rebellion because he was thinking if Moi is out, he'll be the one, that kind of thing.
Okay.
The issue of the Gen Zs, yes, they've done something wonderful. It is a different phenomenon. The time of the 1980s and 1990s, and remember Moi actually admitted he tortures people in 1989, and he gave reasons why he does it. That was a different era, single party era. Now we have official multi-party era. And the danger that has been there was the clawback, trying to undermine the very success that had been there. And we can see it coming in different formats. What the Gen Zs did is to blow the whistle. Something is wrong, Their parents were kind of shy, did not want to get involved. Some of them remember the Moi era, So they don't want. But these young people, essentially these are Kibaki children, the ones who are told who are somewhere, free. And some of the things they summoned made them think. So by the time they become of age, they are thinking. And they are taught in schools, if things go wrong, you ask questions. And then they became digital.
Okay.
So they can penetrate and find. That's why they were so effective. And whoever organized them, I don't know. Because they were well organized.
Are they still effective?
Not as effective as that time. What happened was this.
Yeah.
They said their motto was what, the Constitution? It's the government that was not following the Constitution. They were following with what? They sang the national anthem. They held what, the flags, and they pointed out that this law, which has been passed underneath, is detrimental to the interest of the country. It's even unconstitutional. And they were successful for 2 days. And then somebody came up with a bright idea that people don't know how to demonstrate. They're demonstrating the wrong way. The introduction of the goons. On the third day, there were goons that changed the movement of the Gen Zs to something else. We noticed thereafter that these Gen Zs became split. They started fighting among themselves. They still are, in some instances. But the impact they had, the whole country, was almost the same thing as Saba.
Okay, and before we cross over to, before the other panelists, has there ever been an instance of a politician who is financing goons being apprehended, prosecuted, and perhaps jailed? Ever?
Well, we are waiting.
Okay.
Here, that of course, the question that you're asking is, what if the financier is the same? Because it is also possible that the financier is one, and that financier works with them. And so they may not be able to arrest them. But the issue is his. The first Saba aimed at asking the government to understand that society was growing into active revolution. And we don't want this country to burn. We want that we can be able to be thinking pluralistically so that each one of us is able to give free thought, get assembled somewhere and talk about how we want our country to be. When a government resists these things, remember, they are not the preserve of knowledge and therefore plans. Every human being thinks and gives ideas, more than 3 billion ideas every minute. Daktari, sijui kama ni kweli. That is what I read. 8 seconds and you have got many ideas. When a society commits itself to doing things against what the norm is, they become beasts. We do not want Ruto and his government to provoke this society to an extent that we are going to have goons ruling the streets of this nation. I have seen policemen supervising goons as they beat the people on the streets. If those goons are policemen, which is also possible, we don't know. Maybe the bosses of those in the patrols. Because why would a policeman supervise somebody who is not uniformed, working on somebody to make him a cripple? Or throwing a whole cripple with bad legs into a lorry, unless something is wrong. Is this what the president and his government would want to see Kenyans going through? If that is what he chooses, then I would say personally that time will tell about how much anger could be provoked in the Kenyan mind. But I would like him to think twice that we do not ban Kenya simply because he thinks he should be the greatest in Africa, or some of his neighbors and friends around him think that there is no way. Because we know some of the people who say, look, ukitaka kwenda, na sisi utatuacha namna gani? This is what a lot of Africans have been talking about. And we want him to be character who can be able to prove, because he wants to be number one in Africa, to be number one as a peacemaker, you know, and a Democrat in this country. Now that we are going towards elections, the first Saba was saying, let's have plural parties that we can be able to go to elections free and independently. I am asking him to do that for 2027. And this is the time to tone the nation down, not to ban it.
Tell me this, is the phenomenon of goons new to this country?
It is new because look, just one moment, just one moment. You know, the introduction of goons that fought or beat Joya was done during what they called Jeshi la Mzee. And Jeshi la Mzee was introduced that same year, right? And we can mention the people that were organizing them. If you go beyond that, that is before that, you will actually see that the people that arrested or beat were known policemen. They have kidnapped you. We are going to elections. They put you in somewhere in a certain cave, whatever room. They wait until nominations are over at Sasita. They release you at 4 o'clock. You cannot go to be nominated. And you are free.
Okay, just briefly, and since you're a veteran politician, is it possible for politicians to coexist without hiring the masses?
Of course.
Who at times translate to goons? Well, was this the norm when you were in
Of course. You know, what I'm saying is this, that, and it is good that Buke said it, that it was safer to be in Kenyatta politics and Moi politics, because if they do not put you in prison, they detain you, and if they do not detain you, they work on you kidogo, na minjerendi na unawachiliwa. In fact, to say this, look, that if you look at the people that are alive around here, including Raila, Raila was released from a treasonable charge to detention because Ochuka and Okumu have been finito. Right?
Okay.
And then so if you look at it, and he has never faced goons. No.
Before I cross over to Saba,
I'm just concerned that I think we may be staining the Gen Z struggle with talk about money. I think that if there is any similarity between the Saba struggle and the Gen Z struggle, is more about commitment than funding. I don't know how much money one needs to do the suicidal things that they did. Zero. I don't believe so. I have been involved in, I think in a way we are becoming victims of propaganda by the state. When I stood for chairmanship in the 80s at Sono, of course I was beaten and jailed for having received money from Libya, 21,000 shillings for the campaign, so that I can help Libya or something like that. But the truth is this, I used 450 shillings. Up to now, I'm 63, I've not seen a Libyan. But the propaganda, the headlines said, money, or giving money. Yeah. And I know about Saba also. Saba, I know the fellow gave us a sound system. I think it was DS Njoroge. Free. There was another pickup. He was not even paid. I'm saying that it was a struggle that people stepped forward and just fought for free. And when you look at the struggle by the Gen Z, it shares a lot of characteristics. Of course, one of the things that we faced as Kenyan people, as strugglers after 1992, is that the struggle evolved when the NGOs came into space. You know, it became paying to participate in a struggle. It became the only struggle where you can grow richer and richer as you run around and that kind of thing. That's what became of us. And again, of course, we became split into small organs. People against torture, you know, sexual mutilation, land alliance, torture of the eye. I mean, I'm saying that there were too many organizations that were created, and all of us were dispersed. And I can tell you, I remember I was hired. by Kenya Human Rights Commission. I was hired because Adona said, take these boys from Safina and give them jobs. That's how I got a job. I was earning 25,000 shillings a number from 6 liver. Actually, don't qualify really for. So I'm saying that one of the reasons why I think the GNC managed to put up a struggle, disregarding all of us, NGOs, political parties, politicians, is because they realized that we were kind of having something in common, a partnership to preserve the status quo.
Okay.
And it was reinforced very strongly by our brother Raila Odinga. Every election time, handshake. Election time, handshake. So when they check, they realize, here it's handshake. This other side, led by the civil society, is driven by funding. Whose funding is predetermined by what the donors want. Say, this year, please, write proposals on the following issues. This is what you're focusing. Then they say, write proposal. Who has proposed? They are the ones who have told you what to write about. So are you writing a proposal, or are you just...
They're dictating, yeah.
So what I saw in the philosophy of the GNC, when they said, no parties, almost no politician, please leave us alone. Let's do it our own. It was after realizing that there was a broader conspiracy by those who were situated in various spaces to preserve the status quo as the continued earning. The civil society became an industry where you could make money as you basically preach hope in a hopeless situation. I'm trying to say that this talk about funding cannot define what the GNC did. Funding cannot define what Saba did. Funding doesn't define the struggles of the 70s. Funding only defines the reformist struggles of the 90s led by the civil society.
Then before we cross over to the man from civil society.
This funding, I'm not talking a lot.
Yeah.
This funding that you're talking about now, is not about the GNC movement.
Okay.
It's about the goons that attack them. That somebody funds, those goons.
Okay.
And we are wondering who is it who does, but not the
Though you sort of raised a serious question, because this year's commemoration, we saw a lot of civil society activists, we saw politicians, and hence the narrative in some parts of the political circles was that this protests have been overtaken by events, and there are some people who have infiltrated the protest to serve their own personal agenda, with the blame going to civil society actors. How do you respond to this?
Yes, of course, I'll be addressing a couple of things. One,
of course, yeah.
The original GNC movement was organic, self-mobilization. They would take time until wee hours of the morning, teaching themselves about the Constitution, analyzing the 2024-2025
bill.
Financial bill. And so it was self-propelling, and it came from within them. But at some point, looking at the inscription of some buildings in town, I started getting a feeling that this thing is being infiltrated. And infiltrated it was. Then, at that time, and I would say this as a civil society actor, a lot of civil society groups became irrelevant for some time. And I could see some of them, playing catch-up. And trying to also get a bit of the limelight generated by Gen Zs. And I'll share with you my personal experience. I said, we were about to produce a magazine at that time. And I went to a number of civil society groups, especially after, Ford Foundation had been, fingered as, and accused and alleged to have funded, the Gen Z protests. I tell you, those civil society people were thoroughly scared. Nobody responded to my email and said, we want you to support a few of these Gen Zs. And we had some of them in the leadership of that movement who had published things that we wanted to print, to produce in our newsletter. But we wanted, as young people, give them some token of appreciation. Nobody responded, including those that work with youth. So part of the reason why you are seeing reemergence of civil society is because the Gen Z that literally ran them out of town. And so it's a comeback. A comeback with all its limitations. Civil society of today, of course, Boke has alluded to the fact that civil society is divided. But we have also learned as civil society that there is a way we can still work together through umbrella. I mentioned the NCC. It's not that it was one organization. It brought together different progressive civil society movements. That increasingly has become difficult to achieve for civil society. You will see a demonstration today in the streets organized by civil society to say, why for heaven's sake, didn't they call me? You saw what happened the other day. I saw some of them claiming that it was a holiday. It was a holiday partly because the authorities had kept people out of town. It was a holiday because the business people were fearing their premises being looted. But the handful of group that I saw around Parliament building was not enough to make June 25th a holiday. Okay. And so that is how limited the civil society is today. All right. And they know that, and of course, donor funding has been diminishing with the time. As to whether the Gen Zs can repeat what they did in 2024, of course, it's a matter for debate. My sense is that they have gone separate ways, that it was a one-issue lobby. When you have a one-issue lobby, without organization, without a defined leadership, then it was bound to go the way it went. And I think, if you asked me on reflection, I think it is even good that they said, we are tribeless, we are partyless, we are leaderless, because Kenyans tend to get divided when it comes to, electing leaders. You are seeing even what is going on with the so-called united opposition. They are not as united as they would want us to believe. Okay. Civil society itself. Yeah. If you put all civil society in Kenya today and ask them to elect a leader, they'll never. They observe elections, write very nice reports, but ask civil society to do elections. The NGO Council. I think that is discouraging. No, not discouraging. I'm setting facts. I'm setting facts.
There is something I want to say about that.
I've been in this sector for
we have been around
for 32 years.
Let's give him time to conclude. We'll come to you.
The right of opinion and based on experience. I've been in civil society for 32 years now and still counting. All right. Tell me, when the former NGO Council last held elections, you cannot remember. Tell me, look about the election of the Maendeleo ya Wanawake. It's always a running battle. They are civil society. You used to see about the National Council of Women of Kenya. Any umbrella body of civil society are some of the worst. In fact, the only civil society group, which is a professional body, capable of conducting credible elections, is the Law Society of Kenya. The medical practitioners. Those ones will do elections, and the elections will be accredited across the board.
Is that lack of speaking in one voice by design, by default? What's the root cause?
Let me tell you, some of you think that civil society is made up of angels. We do the very bad things we accuse politicians of. We elect on the basis of ethnicity. There are certain people in civil society circles, certain forces, that, if we are not the ones, or people allied to us, Buke knows what I'm talking about.
I also know.
Buke knows what I'm talking about.
Let's hear.
If it is not somebody who is aligned to us, then it must die. With such mentalities, civil society can never tell you that they have been able, to conduct elections.
In the last, that's okay. I want us to be clear about the word elections. When we talk about civil society, we are talking about a buffer zone to society, that is to the country. that they are going to be conducting various activities, including education programs, to inform the public about what is happening around here. But the elections within and among themselves, that is something else. If they are going to be united or work separately to inform the people about the elections for 2027, I believe they are not capable of doing that. If it is about their own elections, I mean, when we talk about civil society, other than the Royal Society of Kenya and the Kenya Medical Association, all the others are trusts and small societies, what have you, made up of about 20 people, 15 people, and so forth. Those ones can go to their elections anytime they want. But to come and tell us who we are going to be electing tomorrow, they may not be able to do that because each one of them is competing for some money space.
That makes sense. Prof has been quite patient. Let's bring him in. A lot has been said about civil societies. I'd like your take on elections, because we have elections coming next year. There's a certain school of thought that, you train a tree while it's still young, and the oldest generation are used to voting along ethnic-based lines. Did the 1990 Saba movement aim to break this ethnic-based political containment? And what's your review about the voting patterns come 2027? Will it be issue-based? Or will we still have influences of perhaps politicians dishing money, or ethnic-based voting, or six-piece voting? Or what's your analysis of it?
I think we've made some progress, and let us not underestimate the voter. There are times when the voter has voted conscious, and then it has surprised people. I think the coming election will be issue-based. There will be effort to play the old card. Some politicians claim that they control certain regions. Therefore, whatever they say is what will happen. It doesn't go that way. But it has some weight, but not all the time. One of the examples I like giving about the difference there. In 1961, 1963, there were two major elections, pitting KANU and KADUE. The government of the day and the leaders of the day told people to vote KADU. Right? And they portrayed KANU as a two-tribe party. The Kukes, because of the Mau Mau, and the Luo because of Mboya and Odinga. These are the bad ones. Everyone else is good. And in simple logic, it makes sense. Because if all the other people voted against KANU, there's no way KANU would win, even today. Yet when the results were out, what did we see? KANU swept the board from the coast to the lakes. So how do you explain that? Simply means that the voter was more intelligent than the leaders. Because the voter believed KANU is the one that was fighting for independence.
Okay.
And that's why KANU became the party of the first African government, because they portrayed that, and they were able to portray the KADU people as lackeys of the colonial government, the settlers. Now, there are other instances you can say that. A friend of mine wrote a little book about the 2007 election along the coast. And the argument was that Kibaki got votes only where there were Kikuyus at the coast. And he offered some data, and I was asked to review the book. So I went through his evidence. So I asked my friend, in this ward, there are no Kikuyus there. And Kibaki won. In this wood, in this. So what are you talking about? Another friend of mine in some rural areas, Kebaki got a lot of votes because he was credited with CDF and free education. People thought that CDF was his creation.
Okay.
So you have some people jumping up and down, but their parents were looking at them like this. What are you talking about? Why? Because the parents had other ideas. They could see CDF, which was not there before. And they attributed it to who? So you got some pockets and say, how come the theory is not working? Something is wrong, eh? So I think in many places it will be issue-based. If people are really tired of somebody, they'll vote against him or her, whether we like it or not.
All right.
In the last election,
Briefly, sir.
yeah, Uhuru Kenyatta campaigned for Raila. And it was assumed that people in the mountain will vote for Raila because Uhuru said it. They didn't. So you ask yourself, why? If that was the... So what I'm saying is that the election will be issue-based. People weigh things that they are, what they think is their interest. Of course, they weigh the money because it's there, but they vote.
So the money won't sway from where you sit?
No, it will have a little effect here and there, but not that big.
Okay, let's see how it all plays out. Gentlemen, we're pressed of time, so we'll start with the final rounds, starting with you, because at the end of the day, we have a protest scheduled for tomorrow. Despite the police saying they didn't receive a notice, we saw activists actually agitating to take a petition to Parliament against extrajudicial killings, abductions, and forced disappearances, and the list goes on. Having prior experience, what do you make of the protest set for tomorrow, and what will be the measure of their success? Is it presenting a petition? Is it the numbers that turn up on the streets? Or how do we measure the success?
Well, what we're having is a commemoration.
Yes.
And I think that politically, a commemoration is the greatest act of generosity and kindness, because it seeks to salute those who are not there, who can't reply, who can't say thank you. But still we set out. So that this country thinks tomorrow is an important day is really a sign of hope that we may not be destroyed after all. We still have a soul, because we can say thank you to those who brought us into this world. Into the current political dispensation, away from colonialism and other, forms of governance. So from that go, that this country is talking about tomorrow, and thinks tomorrow is what talking about, is a score. Then, talking about success, I think it's impossible to fail, because success means paralyzing the system. Success means pouring on the streets and paralyzing the system. Now, this system has given us cheaper ways of paralyzing this country. And that is by threatening everybody and say, okay, fine, let's stay home. We see how much money you're going to make and steal from us. So tomorrow is a successful day. Whether we turn up or not, it's still going to be a successful day. The loser is known. The enemy of those who want to be remembered, who need to be remembered tomorrow. Okay. Architects of our country.
And Jeru, as you give us your final take, there's always talk about intergenerational collaboration. There are those of you who have institutional memory. The younger demographic has perhaps their digital survey, they have the numbers, we're a youthful society. How do we bridge the gap, that cultural gap, and how can this young activist actually learn from those who were there before without being diluted in any way, shape, or form? Yeah.
First of all, I am very happy to hear the young people say that they are going to be on the streets tomorrow. Why? Because for 36 years, we have remembered Saba. And so within the Kenyan society, it has become part of our custom, political custom, that this day should be respected and honored, and it is a memorial. And therefore, the country, the government, should also not feel threatened. Because in fact, according to the Constitution, that is Section 37, it is very clear of what a demonstration is, what picketing is, what processions are, etc. So the government wants the people to behave the way they want. Like it is a Catholic church, Otunga, leading Catholics with rosaries. That is not the way a political demonstration should be, But even that demonstration by the church, armed with rosaries, is already violent. Spiritually, again, is the governance, Because all they are saying is, we are calling upon the Spirit and Jesus Christ and the powers of Mary to beat these people that are bothering us. But they don't fight with stones, they go with rosaries. That's already an arm for them. Yeah. The young people are saying this. We want a commemoration where we are going to be saying, we lost so-and-so. Let us remember him. Let us pray for him. What the police do is they don't want anybody on those streets. They want themselves to be on the streets. And therefore, they become the demonstrators, And you see, the government has never appreciated that it is the policemen that are demonstrating, even against them. The reason why we hate, and I hate myself, I hate the policemen, is because the government allows them to beat us. And therefore, I don't want them on the streets. And we ask the government to tell them to move. Now, this generation we are talking about, when we have formed a tradition that has grown into a custom, then all it means is this: I am alive today to see my past and see my children doing what I expect a young man shall do in his age. Yeah. This young man should be able to respect that we were there. And we know, just like Saba is saying, I have been there for 32 years. Now, in those 32 years, experience enough. We have been here for 36 years with Saba. So we have got that experience. The Gen Zs should respect that we do it together. Where it is going wrong, like I have said here, when you know there is something wrong going, tell the young people that they could hurt themselves in this and this manner. Not like Kachagwa said yesterday or the day before, because I thought that was not very good. He is saying we must remove Kasongo. Very good. And then the next thing, I am a Mau Mau son of a Mau Mau. And then the next thing is, Tabadari, I'm telling my children, don't move out because you'll be killed. He is talking like Luto himself, which is not correct. Not for a struggler, not for a liberator, not for a freedom fighter. It has never been seen in Africa that you are going to liberate your people by telling them to sleep. Go cover yourself with the blankets.
But they say it's the vote that matters, so we didn't want
it is not going to be in the blankets. The vote will not be in the blankets. Okay. Even the voting day, we must walk out. Right. And whatever happens, go to vote. Okay. But now, after saying that, I want to say this. We have got the elders, we have got the commanders, and we have got the young people. The young people are national warriors. And a national warrior cannot be stopped by anything else but to do what the elders say is correct. When they have said is correct, then they must move. Tomorrow, I expect that we are going to be on demonstration peacefully with unarmed to make sure that we remember the day of Saba, those we lost and those we have been losing every time there is a demonstration. And lastly, to say, we must think as a country, not as government, as society, about how to consolidate these days. Because you have got JM Karaoke Day, you have got Ouko Day, you have got Saba, you have got Gen Z Day, you have got how many days are we going to be celebrating? What we want is, let us look for a day as people of this nation and say, we are going to have a Liberations Day. Liberations, not liberation. Liberations Day that we shall be remembering. And I proposed, selfishly, Let us have Saba Saba to be the day. And when we meet, we shall be remembering about 50 or so liberation systems.
It's interesting you say that. There's talk about June 25th being a holiday, being gazetted. Is Saba Saba actually gazetted?
We have never fought to have it a public holiday.
The way we gazetted it, if you will allow me, of course I know.
Yes, as you give us final remarks.
My final remarks.
Yes.
You know, in the Moi days, whenever the rest of the country was observing Kenyatta Day, we used to be at 4Cs along Gong Road, celebrating Heroes and Heroines Day.
Okay.
Today, it is in the Constitution. If you ask me, we don't need another day. Though these are the heroes, what we need to assert is that the people who have been garlanded as heroes with all these, knighting and, I don't know, this title, and so on and so forth, these are the people who should be given those recognitions. Those are state recognitions and commendations. Okay. So we don't need another day. Yeah. I would stand and face the Gen Zs and say, we don't need another day on 25th of June. We don't need another day on 7th of July. We already have a day in the Constitution for heroes and heroines of this republic.
Okay, let's agree to disagree.
Yeah. But as, in my final word.
Yeah, briefly.
And particularly about tomorrow. The fact that Kenyans know that tomorrow is Saba Saba is already a success. Two, commemorations do not just have to be demonstrations. And that's why I like the commemorations of 25th June. In Mombasa, they had a peaceful procession, then a church service. In Kisumu, they had a mass voter registration exercise, and so on and so forth. If the question you had asked Gadango were to be asked to me, I would say, Gen Zs, and particularly those who have taken the mantle from those of us who have been there before, need to also invite Gadango for that a session on intergenerational learning, so that they understand what the Gen Z, the Saba Saba was about. Otherwise, if I saw some young people yesterday on a national television, and at some point I thought they have not internalized the theory of some of these struggles. So tomorrow, if I heard they have invited Gadangu, they have invited Buke, they have invited Professor here for a session. It doesn't have to, we don't have to lose lives. Just because Saba Saba was a demonstration, it must be. No, of course there are others who, feel that they must, have a peaceful procession. All right. I've seen the regional police saying they have not received a notice. Yes. On my phone, I've seen a notice, this time with a difference. No police rubber stamp. The law. People run away with 37. Article 37 is not self-effecting. The Public Order Act that we amended or contributed to the amending in 1997 requires that you notify the police station under whose jurisdiction the procession will be taking place. This notice that is signed by Francis Awino, unlike the one of 25th June, does not seem to have been served on at the central police station. So just doing a notice and sharing it on social media does not amount. And to that extent, I reluctantly agree with the regional commandant that it may not have been served.
That's a rare sight. Okay. From final say as you finalize.
Well, it's an interesting discussion. Now, Saba Saba was a momentous period. Its meaning to me, that's when Kenyans lost fear of fear. No longer afraid. And that was the landmark in itself. And we have not gone back to that. There have been retreats, yes, but not the way it was before that. Now the Gen Zs have also got their importance. This will not be repeated. But it's something to remember that it happened. What they showed is that they can think. That thinking is not a crime. And when something is wrong, you have a right to think and to raise your voice. That's what the Gen Z showed. Okay. And this is now their generation contribution to the environment of the moment. Saba Saba was the response to the environment of the And this was this. Now the alphas, when their time comes, and others will have their own moment, and either they will come back to the Gen Zs and back to the Saba. But each of them has had its impact on the country for the positive.
Okay. Asanteni sana, gentlemen. So much to talk about, so little time. I think we've been able to converse most issues. Most of you will still be making media rounds in the spirit of civic education. So I'm pretty sure you'll be able to converse other issues. But thank you so much for making time for KTN on the eve of Saba, a momentous day in the history of Kenya's governance landscape. We're joined by Wafula Buke, a former political prisoner. Equally joined by Njeru Gadhangu, needs no introduction, former Runyenjes MP and Second Liberation veteran. Asante sana for your time, Prof. Macharia Munene, asante sana. He's a political historian and the executive director of Kenya National Civil Society Center, Suba Churchill, who equally gave us his narration of where he was 36 years ago and the little steps he took to ensure that, you know, the second liberation is a success. Asanteni sana and all the best tomorrow. Remember, as members of the Fourth Estate, we'll be highlighting what exactly is happening in the course of the day, unfiltered, unbiased. So do trust KTN to keep you updated, even as we hope for peaceful commemoration. I'm Jesse Rogers. Have yourself a good night.